Hi guys, my name's Seb Tudor, I'm the man on the Silver Mountain, and welcome back. Now today I want to talk about some of the fallout that we've seen from BlizzCon last week. Most prominently the Destiny Immortal announcement and the reaction to it. And for those of you that haven't seen it, basically Blizzard at their fan convention of all places decided to announce a version of the Diablo game, or an entry in the Diablo gaming franchise that is mobile focused. When historically, Blizzard has been very much more focused on your PC audience more so than anything else. And I wanted to talk about this because it's another instance that kind of highlights the disconnect between the consumer and large companies, especially in things that are experience based, like entertainment, and how there's this big void. And I wanted to talk about gaming companies specifically because we've been seeing it more and more and more and more and more from them rather than anyone else, because sitting down watching a movie is much more of a passive experience, which you can rebel against. So you can rebel against things in your favourite books, you can argue the point, you can point out how flawed they are in various ways. But with video games, you're actually getting involved in what's going on. You're involved in a community, you're involved in direct actions that affect your own experience as well as just the game as a whole potentially. And so as a result, there's much more investment in that, and also it's more expensive as a hobby. You want to watch a movie, you can watch certain movies online for like a handful of pounds. Stuff like music and books, again, also relatively speaking quite cheap. But when it comes to gaming, there's a much greater investment because you need all the hardware for it, be it console, be it PC, whatever, as well as then buying the games that often cost a lot. And especially in the modern day, you're looking at things like DLCs and microtransactions as well to enhance or continue your experience. So there's a lot more money going into it, and this is one of the reasons why Blizzard is such a huge company anyway, because they have more people with investment bias than anyone else. When an unpopular opinion incoming here, Blizzard is an incredibly overrated studio. Most of their games, in terms of basic concept, are rip-off, but they have been just ripped off very well. And then when it comes to things like World of Warcraft, even to this day, where really and truly they have no reason to be as expensive as they are, in terms of the various costs involved and the on-running ridiculous subscription that other games have proven doesn't need to be there. They have just milked money, and people are loath to turn around and go, I made a mistake, I spent money on something that hasn't turned out so well, and so because all that money has gone in, they've gone, right, we are behind this product all the way. And that's just my opinion on Blizzard. Like even Overwatch, which is the Blizzard game that I it's the only Blizzard game that I play at the moment. Even that is pretty derivative. It's not as good as people suggest. It's easy to get into, but it's not all that really. There are other games that have done better within the same sphere, but unfortunately haven't had the same traction because they don't hold the Blizzard logo on their box or whatever. And so that kind of attention then causes conformity from other places and degradation of other better products and all that kind of thing over time. But lots of people have been going, oh well, this is one of the first times that Blizzard has ever really shown that they are disconnected from their player base. What on earth are you talking about? Especially since they've become part of Activision-Blizzard. They've been horrible. They've in terms of certain things, in terms of monetization of products and stuff like that, they've been pretty terrible all along. But then also, if you will cast your minds back a few years now, I can't remember exactly how many years, but there was one, I think it was one, maybe the second BlizzCon, something like that. There was someone that stood up and went, I don't like Cataclysm. I don't like most of these new expansions that are coming out. Wrath of the Lich King was kind of the peak for me. Why can't we have rolled back or kind of classic servers? There are lots of people that would want that because they didn't like the changes that the sweeping changes that you made to the game. Can we have those, please? And the guy on stage literally turned round with a very similar reaction, by the way, to the reaction that these Diablo Immortal guys gave, where at that point he said, well, you might think you want that, but that's not what you want. The most condescending and miserable response that anyone could give you. We know what you want better than you know what you want. We're going to give it to you. You're going to pay us for it. That's going to be the end of it. And so on. Now, recently, yeah, they've come round to going, actually, the classic servers are another way that we could milk money from people, so let's do that. Free to subscribers, but otherwise you're going to have to jump in and pay for the classic servers as well. So it's another way for them to diversify their income. But then you look at the Diablo Immortal announcement and you had questions like, is this going to come to PC at all? No, of course it's not. It's a mobile game that's a reskin of another mobile game that's a reskin of one of the earlier Diablo games, essentially. And then one of the other questions that has now become infamous was that is this a joke? And lots of people, when they said, no, this isn't a joke, what are you talking about? Everyone was booing. Everyone there, these hardcore fans that paid more money to Blizzard to go and see these announcements, go and see these things. They were booing these devs on stage, and the devs were like, what, don't you have phones? That's not the response to give. It's just as condescending, it's just as miserable. And yet then we look at the rest of the top end of gaming publishers and gaming developers throughout the world at the moment, and you've got people like EA who are going, sense of pride and accomplishment that comes from spending money on loot boxes. No. I mean, in certain parts of the world, sure, especially in kind of more Eastern markets, more Asian markets, you are more likely to find people who see splashing out, being a whale in an MMO, for instance, spending a lot of money on microtransactions and cash shop items and things like that. Yeah, there's more of a, oh, look at this sign of wealth that this person has outside the game that they are now also displaying inside the game. But that's a slight cultural difference. So when you look at EA, and most of their market is in the West, especially in the States, where microtransactions are very are kind of reprehensible in various ways and stuff like that. You've got this kickback against the sense of pride and accomplishment. Oh, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And also their bullshit gets called out very quickly in terms of, oh, we've now got a moral compass, we are now going to do more for the gamers and all that kind of thing. And you've got people going, well, no, you obviously aren't, because of all the stuff you're throwing into the FIFA games and stuff like that to just drain more money. It's painful to watch in various ways, because again, a lot of us who grew up gaming, maybe not the people who were kind of on the cusp of adulthood or adults when gaming first came in, but especially people like myself, my brother, a whole load of my friends, who once we had got to kind of approaching our teens, video games and gaming became a very core part of our hobbies and our development throughout that period. We can all remember games like, I have friends who were in love with Diablo 2. I quite enjoyed Warcraft 3 and stuff like that. I've played World of Warcraft for a while. It was good to play with friends, but not just a good game, in my opinion, but there's that. But then, you look at EA games where you've got, again, all of the various BioWare titles that have come out that have been absolutely amazing right up until recently. You've got the Microsoft, who were really shitty about things early on, who have now turned things around and have started doing kind of more games for gamers kind of stuff. So you've got the openness to cross-platform play, and how now with the kind of Xbox Live system, which unfortunately is crap, but it allows you to just purchase a game and play it on your PC, play it on your Xbox, play it whichever one you prefer, or some combination of the two. So there's that openness. But then you look at PlayStation, who label themselves as kind of the game console for gamers, and they're opposed to cross-platform play. They're opposed to working well with others and kind of making stuff work. And yet, yes, they're still putting out amazing games that are single player, don't have microtransactions and things like that. But then also they have sections of their lineup that get neglected in favor of those couple of big titles. And then you've got these big disconnects between what people want as consumers, which is pretty easy to get. Microtransactions, mobile games, stuff like that, they are not the things to pitch at people. Yeah, even in regards to the game's makeup. Granted, you shouldn't acquiesce to just noisy gamers, but when you've got people like the developers, the writers from ArenaNet, consistently in regards to Guild Wars 2 being negative towards players, labelling those that may very well be raising legitimate criticism as haters and things like that, when you've got people on that writing team, one of the guys, the guy that got sacked, whose name escapes me at the moment, suggesting that stuff like world building isn't something that they need to care about, even though world building and is a big part of immersion and is part of what allows people to spend hours and hours and hours within your game. Apparently it's not something they care about, so no wonder the story has gone downhill, no wonder the number of players has dropped off in various ways, and how there is a lot of contention in regards to discussion around the game. Again, there are certain studios that stand out as doing things best. One of them, which I'll be taking a look at again later this week, Digital Extremes with Warframe. They are very conscientious about how they manage their microtransactions, because they are a free-to-play game and money is needed, but they are very transparent in the way that they discuss what goes into their cash shop, and how most of the things that are in the cash shop that aren't purely cosmetic can also be gained purely through play with a little bit of effort. Sometimes a lot of effort, but mostly with just a bit of time and effort. And then, in terms of story and development and working on the game, they will take ideas, they will employ people from their community, they will develop things in line with going back and playing through the game publicly to take things on board, to re-experience it for themselves. And yet that's something that a lot of game developers seemingly tend not to do. The number of people that have highlighted that a lot of game developers stop playing games when they are essentially in the big leagues, just because of the amount of time and how, when you're working behind the scenes all the time, the mystery, the fun of it starts to dissipate somewhat. Well, yeah, that's all very well and good, but unfortunately it means that you're not learning from the best in your industry, you're not learning from what people want, you're not talking to people about what they want, you're not engaging with the medium that you're working with. Who are the people that make the best films? The ones that are immersed in it, the ones that love it, which is a shame to me in various ways, because some of those people, Guillermo del Toro being one of them, loves his movies, loves his stories, loves his various aesthetics, and yet at times has just not been able to make movies he's wanted. So, there's that. But going back to the point, a lot of people have now been complaining about how entitled gamers are and all the rest of it. It's like, well, if you've paid, if you've supported the development of a game for decades, this is the same that I feel about Star Trek and Star Wars as well, by the way, with the travesties that have been made of their more recent iterations. It's like, if you have been supporting that for the longest time, then yes, you are just purely due to the money that you have introduced to it, you are entitled to have that part of your investment realised. Granted, there are lots of other people that have also chipped in and all the rest of it, but when you have an overwhelming outcry of get rid of the microtransactions, there are better ways of doing this, or get rid of the loot boxes, there are better ways of doing this. Why are you putting it on a mobile phone? We don't want that. Why has our money that we've given you from previous games within this franchise gone towards something that none of us want? That's something that, yeah, they've got a stake in it. They've got they are an interested party, as it were, in legal terms as much as anything else. You know, they have a direct interest in the fallout of where their money has gone as a result of exchange for product, and especially when you're looking at live service stuff, there is a much greater consideration in regards to what those people want, or at least there should be, because it's their continued support that allows you to continue to develop your game, build your game, do what they want, and build on the things that they have enjoyed most to make the game better, rather than let it slip and slide and ruin experiences and all that kind of thing. And yet there are a lot of game developers out there who probably don't have a lot to say on these things, because they are just the people that go in and do their jobs, and that's fine. And that's why you shouldn't be sending negative responses in the form of threats, or in the form of just tirades at community managers, or at low-level devs and things like that on Twitter or anywhere else, because it doesn't. Firstly, it invalidates what you're saying. You know, you step over the line first in a way that's negative, but it does mean that, you know, for those people who are voicing their concerns, as said, I don't really have a horse in the whole Blizzard race, but in regards to the developers and publishers being completely disconnected from what their audiences want, yeah, there are a lot of places that I very much do have a horse in the race. So I can very much empathise with the people who are really let down and upset by the fact that Diablo Immortal came out and was displayed in such a way. The same goes for people who have been kind of bemoaning how seemingly lacking Fallout 76 is and stuff like that as well. You know, there's an awful lot in the gaming world at the moment whereby you're seeing very large companies not knowing what their audiences want, because they've stopped interacting with their audiences. They assume that they know best or know better, and by assuming that they know best or better, they go and produce a product that people will still buy because there's a label attached to it. You know, if anything, I would say that the one thing we can do to deal with this as consumers, as fans, as people that want to see the things that we love develop and grow into things that we can love even more, vote with your wallet. You know, because if it becomes apparent that, you know, something is not viable, then they'll stop doing it. You know, mobile games, mobile rip-offs of your favourite title, stuff like that. If you don't invest in them, then, you know, they will have to stop doing it. They'll have to stop wasting their money on it. But when it comes to certain things, I realise that is a lot harder. For instance, with things like World of Warcraft, with things like Guild Wars 2, with the various things from EA. in many instances, it's a case of, well, yes, you have this hope, and you want to continue to invest, and you want to see if it gets better, and, it can be very hard to avoid spending the money, giving them what they want, supporting the product, as it were, without then also being your own worst enemy and ruining your own experience of the parts of it that you do enjoy. So it's maybe difficult to be selective at times, but again, for something like Diablo Immortal, where it is completely not what the fans wanted, there are seemingly no redeeming elements to it overall. Obviously there are a lot of people who would have maybe entertained the idea if it had been console, but considering that the other Diablo 3 on console has been fairly successful and fairly well received in various ways, not by everybody, but by a good chunk of a newly grown element of that franchise's fandom. But when it comes to mobile, it's a slightly different kettle of fish, simply because of the limits of the mobile platform. But either way, I have no doubt that it's probably going to make an absolute ton of money, and it's going to encourage them to do more, the same way that EA with Command and Conquer as a mobile game is doing the same thing. It's not what anyone wants, but it's what they're going to keep doing because it's probably going to make money. And unfortunately, the disconnect, the divide between the audience and the producer is probably only going to grow. And it's going to be really sad and upsetting because we're going to see an awful lot of things that could be great, could be well developed into amazing things, fall by the wayside. So, it's tough, it's difficult, and I the thing that I don't really get from working in corporate environments and things is why these producers always seem to think they're the best. Like the number of times that when I've been working in experience-based industries or in industries that have consumer bases with a very strong expectation of what the products are going to be like, very, very prone to disappointment and anger, they're always asking for more information from their customers. They're always sending them surveys. They're always asking them about things. They're always being very open to feedback. They're always looking for as many things as possible that they can leverage to do better. And these games companies just aren't. Imagine their attachment to certain things. I can't help feel is maybe blinding them to the potential of things that could make them even more money if they actually just took the time to look into it, if they took the time to get off their high horse. But anyway, why I raised this topic and have rambled on about it because I'm interested in what you think in regards to both the disconnect and the game specifically, Diablo Immortal. Is it something that you personally are upset about? What are your thoughts generally on the division between consumers and producers, especially in the gaming sphere where there's such a big investment of both time, money, the experience of the player, all that kind of stuff, the community that surround these games. I'm interested to discuss all of it because this is obviously something that I engage with a fair amount as a result of just the stuff that I do on the channel and what I do in my spare time. So, I'm interested to talk about it. Love to hear your thoughts. But otherwise, thank you very much for watching, guys, and I will see you in the video later. Take care. Thank you very much for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this video, found it interesting, please drop us a like, share this video, and subscribe for more. And I'll see you in the video later. Take care.